in 2008, when my mother passed, there was some friends from high school, and she was one of them, and a couple other buddies were there, and they went to the reception afterwards, and it was kind of like a little mini reunion for us because we got to see each other,
Sure.
But yet it was my mom's funeral, so I was just kind of all over mingling with everybody, and everybody saw our three friends. It was Tony, Nick, Becky, and myself. I introduced them to my wife, Irma, and my kids, and then they started showing pictures of their kids, and I looked at them, but I didn't look at them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd seen the picture, but I didn't focus.
Right.
My mind was elsewhere.
Yeah,
so,
that's fair.
That was that, and then that day went on, and we came home. We're about 4 hours south of Sacramento, in a very small community. And the next day, in the evening, I get a phone call from one of my buddies. He says, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing all right." And he says, "You sure?" He says, "Yeah, I'm doing fine." And he says, "Well, he's yours." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "He looks just like you." I go, "What are you talking about?" He says, Becky's son. I said, no. I said, we went out one time and she would have said something.
Hey, how are you? Hello, welcome to Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis, a podcast about DNA discoveries. And I'm your host, Eve Sturgis. I'm here to get everyone to talk about what it's like to discover as an adult that your DNA isn't what you thought it was. So it usually happens with dads, but it can happen with either or both parents. It can happen in any variety of combinations based on situations like sperm donation, infidelity, adoption, sexual assault, consensual relationships. I think that's all of them. I think so. Maybe babies switched at birth. I think that's everything. I'm sure that listeners will let me know if I've forgotten something, a scenario there, but I think that you get the picture. If this is your first time here, welcome. Babies are born all sorts of ways, and families are created in all sorts of ways, but our sociocultural expectation of this and how it should look is very narrow. So these complicated situations are created, and I think that should change. So here I am with this podcast from my kitchen in Los Angeles. It's almost Labor Day. I don't know what that means for us anymore in 2020. So depending on where you live, you may or may not be planning to step outside in the world and experience something like a barbecue or a swim party or a camping trip or back to school shopping. At the time of this recording, my family has no plans. I have nothing to report, nothing to look forward to for Labor Day, but also nothing to dread. So that's saying something in 2020. As if this whole year hasn't been hard or weird enough, the past few weeks have stung for anyone paying attention with a soul. We had here in America another shooting of a Black person by police. Happened in Wisconsin. Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back, and that sparked protests, rightfully so. And then this white teenager with an AK-47 just walked past everybody and shot into the crowd, and he killed 2 people. So if that wasn't demoralizing enough for the month of August, a few days ago, the beautiful, amazing, talented, inspirational actor Chadwick Boseman died from colon cancer, a sickness that most people didn't even know he was fighting. So it's just everything is unfair, as if we didn't already know that. But that's kind of what's going on in the world. And somebody pointed out or questioned my talking about current events in this podcast. It doesn't really maybe have anything to do with the stories and what I'm trying to collect. But I think it's important to put these episodes into context, like historical context. And I think it's really important to also illustrate that life keeps happening. Like, we are all experiencing these DNA discoveries and grappling with these personal challenges, and but the world is not waiting for us. Things just keep on happening. The world is in upheaval in all sorts of ways, and there isn't time necessarily to stop and think about who we are and where we came from, despite sort of like the existential demand that we do so. So, okay. So that is that. But back to this episode. Here we are, episode 8. I have good news. I have a super, super sweet episode to play for you today, and I'm really excited. And if this episode does not make you feel good, then I don't know what will. I'll be honest. So I connected with Jason months and months ago, and we had a wonderful, long conversation. And then it took me longer than I would like to admit, so I thought I would admit it to the hundreds of people listening, to connect with his dad. Okay, everybody, I have a double interview today. So I interviewed Jason, I interviewed his dad separately, but I've tried to marry the experiences together into one episode. These two men could not be nicer human beings. I might venture to say they're the nicest two men in the Western United States, if not the whole country. And it's so wild to think that they didn't even know about each other's existence until a little while ago, because they are so alike. They both like laughing, and they both like to barbecue, and they both like beer. These men love being fathers. They love being family men. And they both really love to talk. So one reason it took me so long to get this episode together is because they both had a lot to say, and I hated to have to go through and cut it all up. But I did my best. I tried to put together a coherent story between the two of them, but please know that this is not all that we talked about. So if you feel like there are big pieces of their story missing, like what's happening with Jason's mom, or what's happening with Jason's birth certificate father, or all the other ways Miguel has reached out to Jason, or how has Miguel reflected on this experience, please know that it was all there. I just had to make decisions based on time and consistency. So I really hope I did them justice. I hope you enjoy spending time with them as much as I did. And I hope that more people embrace their DNA discovery situation like these men did, are doing. Such beautiful examples of having open hearts and empathy in the face of a DNA discovery. May we all be people like this, or know people like this, or raise children like this. I'll be back in a little bit to wrap it up with some thoughts or whatever, how I always do. In the meantime, this is episode 8 of season 2, Everything's Relative. Here are my conversations with Jason and Miguel.
Well, part of it is, I'm not sure, do we just start talking, talk, or?
Yeah, just talk. I mean, you're doing great. We're doing really great. This is how you do it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want me to, I can ask you questions and sort of guide you how to go, but I also just, want to know where your brain is going organically right now anyway. So it's up to you. You can kind of I'm the podcast person, but you're the boss of this experience if you want to be.
Okay. I mean, another thing is I tend to go off in a lot of rabbit trails because I'm my mind just gets crazy and gets stuck on things. But so okay. So it was, I'll just start off at the beginning.
Okay, wait. I know I just said that you were going to be the boss, but I'm going to interrupt and ask. Where did you grow up? Just give me a region.
Okay, I grew up in Alaska.
Okay, cool. All right, so now we've got an image of you, like a boy, like a strapping boy running across the snowy tundra. Okay.
Oh, well, not quite. Okay. But yeah. Oh, man. Oh.
Dog sleds. Did you have dog sleds?
Oh, no. I live. Okay. 34 years. Just living in. When. And my wife and I have always talked about taking a DNA test, but never really done it. And, this last Christmas, or not this last, anyway, when it happened, my aunt had called me on my birth certificate father's side and said, hey, how's it going? We're talking. And, And she's like, I just wanted to get some information from you guys because, I'm doing our family tree, and, a couple aunts and uncles have taken the test, and I just want some information from you guys. I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. I'm like, actually Jen and I talked about taking tests. And we were thinking about maybe doing it for Christmas, but we weren't sure yet, and she's like, well, hey, like, she's like, well, I'm on the website right now. And, if you want, I'll just buy you guys a test for Christmas.
Perfect.
And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, awesome. So I'm like, cool, sweet. So she bought the test, and it came, spin the tube, send it back, and when like I had no worries at all, and neither did my wife.
Right.
My wife was really interested because she just wanted to find more about her heritage. English, Irish, and German, or whatever she. But yeah, anyway, so my wife had asked me, after we sent the test, and she's like, "What if um your BCF is not your real dad?" I'm like, what? I'm like, no, like, you're crazy. Like, why would you even say that?
Why
like,
did she say that? Is she able to explain it?
Well, the thing is I've brought up to her, because I look at my that side, my dad's side of the family, and or BCF. Well, man,
No, it's so hard. I'm following you perfectly, so you can just say your dad, and I know you mean your BCF. Like,
okay, all right,
fine.
It was Tuesday. I'm a garbage man, so I was driving my truck in Portland, and I get a notification.
Every 4-year-old boy's hero.
Yeah. But I was driving my truck, and I pull over, and I get a notification, and it says, your test results are here. So I look at it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, huh. I'm like, that's weird. I don't see any Snooks on here, because that's our last name.
Right.
And,
right.
I'm like, I know my aunts and uncles taken it. I look at the part that tells you everywhere you're from, and I'm like, that's weird. It says I'm like 68% Native North American from Texas. I'm like,
whoa.
I'm like, that's really, like, anyways. And I look, I'm like, okay, there's no English, Irish, no, nothing. The other is like 18% Spanish, and then like 15% Portuguese. And I was like, my sister was like, she wanted to know my results right away, because I do have a brother and sister. They have a different dad, and we already knew that.
Okay.
So anyways, she wanted to know my results right away. So I just screenshot a picture, sent it, and I just kept going on my way. And I was like a little like thinking about it a little bit, not too much, because I was busy and I was at work, and I didn't want to think about it. So I was like, okay, whatever. So I started driving, and my sister calls me, and she's like, hey, did you look at your test results? And I'm like, yeah, I looked at them a little bit. She's like, well, do you know what this means? And I'm like, that can I use his name and you just bleep it out?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, not my dad. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, no. You're like, no, there's no freaking way. 34 years, I would have found something out. 34 years. And she's like, Jason, no, this is like, she's like, you need to look into this. I'm like, no. I'm like, no way. I was in huge denial,
of course.
And I was, things just started going through my head, and I was like, wait, I'm like, no, there's no way. Like, it's just a DNA test. And my sister, she's huge into like murder mystery and like just this kind of stuff. And she's like, Jason, this is how people solve murders. This is how people find long lost relatives. She's like, this is science. I'm like, there's no freaking way. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to do, and she's like, well, later on tonight, take a look at it, look at your relatives and stuff that says your relatives, and anyone that you don't know, just let's go over this. I'm like, okay, and then I get a call from my aunt, because she has full access to my account because she's my sponsor or whatever it is.
Right.
She calls me. She's like, hey, Jason, I saw that you have your test results. I'm like, yeah. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, yeah. It was, I was just, yeah. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, is this something that you want to pursue? And I was like, yeah, I have to. I mean, because I'm a guy that's like all in or all nothing,
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I have to figure this out, because this is, I mean, I was mind blown. I'm like 34 years old, and I was never told anything different, And so that night I get home, and I'm talking to my sister, and and I'm sending her some screenshots of people. I'm like, well, it says there's this one person that's my first cousin. I definitely have never met this person before, so let me message them. And then there's another lady that's like my closest aunt. It says like second aunt or something like that. And so I just sent out a general email like, hey, my name's Jason. I got my test results. I'm looking for my dad. This is my mom's. I can't remember the exact stuff I gave, but
right, just some basic info just to sort of try and narrow it down quickly for them.
Yeah. And so I was, it was just I just sent out a couple emails and I waited a couple days. And anyways, but my sister, through a lot of things, she just went through like Facebook. Like I gave her some names, and so she she looked up my first cousin on Facebook, and then she just went into like she Googled she is ridiculous.
She knows what she's doing.
Oh my gosh!
Wow, I wouldn't even know. It's so cool.
Yeah, and anyways, after all what she did, I'm like, you should be like a search angel, and she's like, yeah, I don't know centigrams and all that stuff. Right. Like, anyways, but yeah, so I messaged a couple people and I got one response back from this lady, and she was just sorry what you went through and stuff, but she's like, I have 5 cousins, because I gave her, I'm like, I'm from I was born in Sacramento, California, and this is my mom's name, and she's like, well, that name doesn't ring a bell, but I have 5 cousins that moved to Sacramento, blah blah. And she's like, but and she gave me surnames and all that stuff. So my sister went crazy after that.
Oh my
she looked up everyone's last name there around Sacramento.
I'm already overwhelmed. I'm like, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. And I'm so impressed that your sister would know what to do, because I'm just like, oh man, you lost me at surnames. Like,
no. So I was emailed that, and I forwarded her the email, and anyway, so she gave me like, this lady passed around this area. She had these 3 different daughters. And anyway, so my sister went through, and through that whole process, it was one day later, my sister messaged me back, and she's like, hey, I think this might be your dad. And it was a gentleman that he was on Facebook, but it looked like he was really sick. And I was like, and she's like, I did some research on his name and stuff, and it looks like he passed away like 6 months ago. And I was like, man, what the heck? Because my whole thing is I just wanted to find out who it was. And then like, do they want to meet me? What's going on? All this stuff. And I got kind of sad for a second, and then like, well, more than a second, but I got sad. And then she was like, but we don't know for sure. Like this is not totally for sure. Let me keep looking. And so
6 months would feel so close and so far.
Yeah. But I wasn't super attached either, so I was like, okay, this sucks, anyway. So so my sister, she started going more into the names that the lady gave me, and my sister sent me a picture of the guy, and she's like, I think this is your dad. And I looked at the picture and I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, no. And I got tingles, I got chills. I'm like, wow, dude, this guy looks just like me. I'm like, it has to be him or a brother. And my sister's like, yeah. And my sister's like, well, it's really weird because I checked out his Facebook profile and he's friends with mom, and
sorry.
And no, that's okay. And one of our uncles. And I was like, what? And she's like, Jason, you need to talk to mom and find this out. I'm like, like, yeah, no, I do. I mean, this is crazy, right?
Had there been any discussion about contacting your mom before then? Like, had anybody said like, just ask your mom?
No, because this was only the next day.
This is happening so fast. Okay. Because for me, everybody was like, well, just everybody, when it happened to me, everyone was like, well, just ask your mom. And I was like, you guys, it's not that easy. This is like really serious stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just curious. Okay. So they were, man, your sister was on the hunt.
Oh my gosh. So because it was Tuesday morning that I found out. Tuesday night, I called my mom when I got off work and I said, hey, can we talk on Saturday? And she's like, yeah. So we had that already scheduled.
Okay.
But within 2 days, within 48 hours, my sister nailed down who my dad was. This stuff is very, very interesting to her, and she was on top of all of it. And so anyways, but she, from there, within the next couple of days, she was just sending me a bunch of pictures. She's like, oh my gosh, Jason, because she still wasn't sure. But the guy looks exactly like me, So I mean, cool. I look exactly like him. And so anyway, so like she sent me a picture and she's like, he's goofy just like you. There's videos. He was up here a year ago and with his family because he was up here for his nephew's wedding. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like he was up here. Like he's married. He has two boys, and they're up here as a family. Anyways, but she's like, there's a picture of him on there goofing around with his wife and stuff. And she's like, Jason, that's exactly you. And there's like, my sister matched up pictures to us, because I went to,
oh yeah,
he has a mustache, and I can't grow facial hair, my life depended on it at all, But I went to one of my friend's daughter's birthday parties where it was a mustache tea party. So yeah, wear fake mustaches and you sip tea. Anyways, and I put that picture up next to him, and it's the same mustache, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous,
Wow.
Anyway, so yeah, and she's like, oh my gosh, this guy likes grilling meat and drinking beer. You guys are definitely related. Anyway, so that that happened. In the next couple of days, obviously we creeped his Facebook a lot, and his wife's and kids. And come Saturday, I go in and I asked my sister to come with me because I don't know, I just get nervous. I don't know, and I tend to talk really fast and like talk at people. And so I'm like, okay, you just need to keep me in line, okay? Because I don't want to feel like I'm trying to put mom on the spot or like trying to interrogate her,
I think it's great. You knew that you needed support and you asked for it. I think that's cool.
Yeah. And it's like, anyway, so Saturday comes around and we go over there, and, I tell her the story I just told you, I got my test results and there's no snooks on there. And she just, and she just sits back. She's like, man, she took a second to take a breath, and she's like, yeah. She's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, what? Like, and and I can't remember exactly how the whole conversation went, but it was, she said, well, you know who it is. And then my sister steps in. Okay, I went through this name. I went through that name.
She's like, let's go. My role.
But yeah, and so she said, "Is it?" My sister said, "Is it Miguel?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's who it is." And
oh my gosh.
yeah, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," And I'm like, listen, like, before I told her this story, I said, before she told me yes, I said, listen, I'm a mama's boy. I'm like, I told her, listen, I love you. I'm not here to judge you one single bit. I'm just here to find out who my dad is, and that doesn't change my love for you. Nothing, well, she's my mom. Like, I mean, and anyways, but anyway, so, I said, so, what happened? And she said, well, your dad and I were, we were dating, but we were in and out, and I went out with a bunch of friends one night, and he was there, and one thing led to another. And she's like, also, your grandparents, her parents, and then Miguel's parents, my father, my dad, my real dad, our parents were best friends. My grandparents were best friends. So they hung out with each other. And they also had a bunch of kids that were kind of in correlation with age with my mom's side. And like I found out I'm gonna do last names now. So my grandpa Wajardo, which is my dad Miguel, and then my uncle on my Soto side, which is my mom's side, was his godfather. So they were very close family. Yeah, very close. Yeah, and like, like I talked to, it was crazy because anyways, so yeah, so they were very close, and they barbecued together all the time. They played dice together. They watched fights together. So it was crazy, and I was like, wow, that's ridiculous. And so mom's like, well, I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I haven't talked to him for a long time, but I met him and his wife at our reunion, and I'll message them when I feel ready to see, to let him know. And I'm like, well, do you think you'll want to meet me? And she's like, Jason, they are such nice people. They are, man, when I met them, she's like, when I met his wife, they were just so nice, and she was like, hey, come on, let's go get a drink and stuff. And so she's like, I hung out with them. They're very nice. And she's like, I'm pretty sure, she's like, I'm sure they'll want to meet you, And this was Saturday. So, so she took a couple days. I can't remember the exact day, but I think it was Monday. Maybe she did Tuesday. I got a text from her on Wednesday, and she's like, "Yeah, I talked to him."
Well, it all started. I got a phone call on February 11th, and 2019. February 11th, it was about 8:30 in the morning. I had the day off of work. My wife and everybody was all at work in school. My kids were at school. And I was sitting there having my coffee, and the phone rings, and it was an odd number. It was a 916 area code, and that's from Sacramento, and that's where I'm from. So all my family has a 916 area code on their phone. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't answer it. Maybe I should. And I thought, well, maybe one of my brothers or sisters or somebody changed their phone number, and they're just calling me to touch bases and let me know. So I answered it. And it wasn't my brothers or sisters.
Right.
They says, "Is this Miguel?" And I said, "Yes." And she says, "Oh, this is Becky." And I'm like, okay, because right away, so when she said her name, this feeling went through me, and I didn't know what, why, like, why are you calling me? Mm-hmm. So she got straight to the point. She says, "Well, I have 3 kids," and she started naming off from the youngest to the oldest, mm-hmm. and she was saying the ages, and then when she got to Jason, she said, "Jason's my oldest, and he is," I want to say she said 34 at the time, and she said, "He's yours." I was just like, oh my God.
What was going through your mind when she was just naming her children?
Well, the night we went out, when she started naming her children, and the night we went out, we got together one time. I mean, we grew up with each other. Our families know each other very well.
Right.
My moms and dads, and brothers, everybody. They all, had birthdays together. Celebrated them together. And so, anyway, when I graduated from high school, I went to school in Arizona, and I came home, and we met up. We went out the one time, and that was it. And then when I was...
One time is all it takes.
Yeah. So that's what I said. I says, when she said that, I says, we went out one time. And she says, well, that's all it takes. And then I asked her, I says, why after 35 years or 34 years are you calling me now?
Yeah.
And she says, well, I just found out too. I go, what do you mean you just found out too? She says, well, when her and I went out, she was apparently with somebody else, dating someone else already. And when I guess the results came up, they figured it was theirs, and
right.
They went about their lives.
Right.
So that's what happened, and I'm sorry.
Take your time.
So they went and did their thing, and so they reached out and they contacted the names in Texas, and then that guided them to San Jose, and then my cousin in San Jose led them to cousins in Stockton and my nephew in Sacramento.
Yeah, don't you love? I love that image of like in movies when they have a line that like little airplane that goes over a map that draws like your little like your whole family history is just like from one little spot to the next until it gets to Sacramento. It's so cool.
Yeah. So they started their next step was once he reached out to my nephew, but it was through the DNA thing. I guess it's kind of like a Facebook, but it's only you'd have to log on to the DNA thing to see if you have any messages. Mm-hmm. So they reached out to him. So he doesn't go on there very often, so he never replied. Mm. So Jason and his sister, they started doing the social media. He said, well, let's find out who graduated with mom and who's their friends on Facebook and whatnot. So they started doing some searching, and they got to the class of 82, and they were searching around, and my name comes up in my background photo, and my profile picture is of me barbecuing with my cowboy hat on.
Right.
And I had a beer in my hand. Mm-hmm. So she goes, that guy's your dad right there.
Mm-hmm. Boom. Mm-hmm.
She says he barbecues and he drinks beer too.
Right.
And you like to do that too.
Right.
So
sometimes I think that's like of course you look alike and you like to do the same things, but I think sometimes there's an intuition happening.
Right.
Like she looked and she knew on I don't know, we'd have to talk to her, but I wonder if she just knew on a deeper level, like if there was...
She could have.
There's something stronger than...
When Jason explained it to me, she was real adamant and real mm-hmm. knew where to go, you know? Mm-hmm. And then that's when they came up with the picture, and then they started putting Jason's picture next to my picture, and then they colored a mustache on Jason. They said, look, it's identical. And it was, it is. So they went and approached their mother and said, I want to meet my dad. Can you get a hold of him? So she did, and that's the phone call that I got.
Right.
And then she told me that he wanted to meet me, and
that
I
was...
said, well, yes, I want to meet him. My wife was at work, and then I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I tell my wife? What's she going to say? Is she going to want to leave me? Is she going to want me to leave? Or, I didn't know. And then all these things were going through my head, and then I started thinking, no, well, why would that happen? Because I was a kid.
Right.
When that happened, I was a kid, and I knew nothing about it. Mm-hmm. It's not like I was trying to hide anything.
Right.
So then I started trying to calm myself down by thinking that. Mm-hmm. And then she comes home for lunch, and then she goes, oh, how's it going? Good, I guess, yeah, good.
Fine, nothing has happened today. Absolutely nothing huge or life-shattering has happened today.
Yeah. Because I didn't want to tell her, just us two. I wanted for the kids to be involved too. Mm-hmm. So it seemed like she only had 30 minutes for lunch, but it seemed like she was here for hours.
Right, like the longest 30 minutes of your life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, she walked out. She comes back in. She goes, I forgot something. Oh my God. Okay. So I'm a nervous wreck, and she goes, is everything all right? I go, yeah, everything's fine.
Right.
I go, just going over some mail. She goes, okay, I'll see you afterwards. I said, okay. She left. And then the kids, they were going to school, and my youngest son, he had started college while he was going to high school. And my other son was working, he had two jobs, and he didn't get home till 8:30 or 9, and the youngest son didn't get home till 9:30, 9:45. So they had some long days. Mm-hmm.
That's a long day. Wow.
And normally I go to bed about 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, well, I got to wait for the kids to get home. I'll talk to him. And so my wife kind of knew something was up because I turned the TV on and we're in the bedroom, and he says, "You never watch TV this way." I go, "I know, I just can't sleep. I don't know what it is."
Yeah.
She goes, "Are you sure?" I go, "Yeah, it's fine." And then before we knew it, the oldest one got home, and we were talking a little bit. And then while we were talking, the youngest one had already gotten home. I didn't realize it. He already jumped to bed.
Oh.
So I go, "Where's your brother at?" "Oh, he's already in bed." I go, "What?" I go in his bedroom and I said, "Son, we got to talk." He says, "No, Dad." And he goes, "Oh, we'll talk in the morning." He goes, "My day went fine," because usually every single day I ask him, "How's your day go? How was class?" and this and that, And he says, "Dad, we'll talk in the morning." I said, "No, we need to talk now." He goes, "Dad," and I go, "Look, we all need to go in the room and talk." So when the tone changed, they just like, okay.
They knew something was going on. Yeah. Oh man, I wonder what was going through their mind. They must have been so.
Yeah, they thought each other did something.
Yeah.
They thought somebody was in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And they get in the room, and I'm trying to figure out a way how to start it. And then, "Who's in trouble? Are you in trouble, Dad?" I said, "No." "Are you sick?" No. I said, "I got a phone call this morning, and a little bit of my past came up." And my wife sits up. She says, "How far back?" And she looked at me, and I was like,
I like how she's doing the math immediately. She's doing the math. She's like,
yeah. I tell her, I go, I don't know, 1983, somewhere in there.
mm-hmm.
And she, I could see she relaxed and she sat back down. She was okay. And then I'm still trying to struggle to talk because the kids, they didn't catch on to that comment yet.
Right.
And then everybody sits back up and she says, "Well, is it a boy or a girl?"
Oh my gosh. She is so attuned. Yeah, I love it.
I go, "It's a boy." And she goes, "Well, how old?"
Yeah.
I go, "I don't know. I think 34, 35. I was trying to do the math. My head's so twisted right now, I still can't do it.
Right.
And one of my sons say, "He's a man."
Yeah.
I said, yeah. She goes, they both said, "Well, so does this mean we have an older brother?"
Yeah.
Yes, it does. "Well, when do we get to meet him? I want to meet him."
Oh, that's so cool.
I want to meet him. If we got an older brother now, this is cool. And, they just went on. And I said, "Well, I got to call Becky back tomorrow and let her know. And that she'll give me the information, his information, or vice versa.
Yeah.
She'll give Jason my information and then he'll call."
And what are you thinking at this point? Or feeling?
Once I told my family,
mm-hmm.
it was like, now I want to build a relationship with him.
Mm.
I want to get to know his family.
Yeah.
I want to know all about him, and how he grew up and whatnot. I wanted to know everything.
So that was Wednesday morning, like around 9, and then 1 o'clock rolls around, and I see I have a Facebook message, and I'm like, "Oh man, I never get messages. Like, what the heck, So I read it, and it was his wife. She's like, "Hi, I'm Irma." She's like, we want to meet you. We're so excited. We've been creeping out your Facebook, and we had a message back and forth for a couple hours.
Oh, Jason, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome, and she's like, "Here's his number, please call tonight." And I was like, "Whoa, tonight?" Like my mom told me to wait till the weekend, but if you're telling me tonight, I'll do it,
And then the next day, after that conversation, I get home from work, and my wife pops open a cold beer for me, and she's like, "Go sit on your recliner."
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, "Wow, but is everything all right?"
Red flag. Yeah.
Yeah. She goes, "What do you want for dinner?" And she served it up and everything, and then she comes over and she says, "I did something today." She says, first she said, "You're gonna be mad at me." I said, "Why?" She says, "I did something today that I wasn't supposed to do." And I thought, I don't know, maybe she went and met somebody else,
Oh boy.
Think,
Yeah.
So then she told
I mean,
me,
I guess at this point, anything could happen.
Right. And I'm thinking, well, that in my head, and these thoughts in my head, it's like the thoughts lasted forever in my head in one split second.
Mm-hmm. Like time stood still. Yeah.
Yeah, and then because at the same time I was thinking, well, she was real happy last night to meet him. She wouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not that. So then she continuing talking. She goes, "I reached out to him." I said, "What are you talking about?" Well, I guess on Facebook, she went on Facebook and did, checked out his pictures and whatnot. But on Facebook is linked to Messenger.
Right.
So she did the Messenger thing to him.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently right away, he responded.
Uh-huh.
I guess within seconds, it seemed like. And they started conversing back and forth, and his wife was involved, and Jenny was involved, and then she was they were doing like a three-way texting or messaging.
Yeah, messaging. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So then that's what she said happened, and I said, "Oh, okay." And then she says, "Well," she goes, "He's supposed to call tonight at 7:30, and yet we're gonna meet him."
Oh my gosh.
I go, yeah. I go, "On FaceTime?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Oh man." So then I got up and I couldn't sit down. I was like, "Oh man,"
Yeah.
I was real excited. I was nervous, and oh man, it was quite the feeling.
Uh-huh.
So the next couple hours went by so slow.
Sure.
I mean, it was just like a mile,
So yeah, so I got I got a little held up that night because my son was in wrestling, and I told him I set a time with her 8:00. I'll call tonight at 8:00. So I felt bad because his wrestling ended at 7:30. I thought we were gonna get going and go, but there was a meeting afterwards, and then I had to eat dinner. And so like 8:30 rolls around, and they're like, later on I found out my dad was like, "Oh my gosh, I was so afraid you just didn't want to meet us anymore. I was afraid."
7:30 comes rolling around, and the phone didn't ring. 7:35, no ring. I just kept looking at the clock,
Right.
and it seemed like every 10, 15 minutes, and there was no ring. So finally, about 8:30, I said, I go, maybe he figured, what? Why does he want to meet me? I don't know. I have to go to bed. So I was all sad. My heart was down.
Yeah.
I got up.
That'd be so confusing.
And it was their area code. I go, "It's him, it's him." So I answered it. He didn't do the FaceTime the first time he called. It was just us talking. And when I answered it, and he says, "How's it going?" And the sound of his voice sounded exactly what I sound like on a tape recorder.
Right.
And I was
wow,
like,
how weird.
I froze for a second, I was like, "Oh my God." And he says, "This is Jason." And he goes, I said, this is Miguel, and I'm your dad." And then we started talking, and oh man, it just this chill was going through me. I felt like I was talking to my own voice.
Yeah, it's like a sci-fi movie.
Anyways, because I called so late, but we talked for like 2 hours,
Oh, wow.
And then ever since then, we talked for hours every night. I just get to know them and talk to them, and it was crazy. It was just like, man, anyway. So that went on for a while, and you know, the Snook side, they're really happy for me. You know, they were
Yeah.
just like,
Oh, wow.
you know, I honestly, I could not have asked for two better families to happen to have this happen with. I mean, they're both families, the Wajardos and my mom's family too. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
like for me, it was the Wajardos and the Snooks, and both like the Snooks were like, "Oh my gosh, we're so happy for you," you know, just you know, no matter what, you're a nephew, you know, we love you, you know, and it just, man, it just, I don't know, it was just crazy. It was a crazy
This is
experience, and
my heart is so full right now. Like
oh
my eyes
man,
are full of tears. Like this is just like a really beautiful way for one of these stories to fall together.
yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, you know, it's weird because before all this, I've never been an emotional guy. Like
Hmm.
movies, TV shows, whatever. You know, my wife's the one that cries when like something happens. You know, and I'm like, are you seriously crying? Like, and we're watching The Bachelor, and I'm like, are you seriously crying just because you broke up with her? You know, and she's like, she was a nice girl. You know, and
Right.
and you know, and I've never been emotional, but now like I'm watching The Bachelor and I'm tearing up, and she's like, "Are you seriously crying?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry," you know. But it's
Wow.
this whole
Hmm.
situation has made me so opened up. I guess I don't know, like
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
and it's weird because, um, yeah, I don't know, but
Yeah,
anyways,
just
but
like broke your heart open a little bit, or it's not in a bad way, but like opened your heart
yeah,
somehow in a wow.
yeah,
That's cool.
but yeah, so I mean, immediately, you know, it took us a while to announce something on Facebook,
Hmm.
and it was actually so we've made a planned trip to go see them, and let's see, when was it?
And they
Like,
were in Sacramento or the Northern
oh,
California area.
I'm sorry, they're actually in Strathmore, California.
Okay.
So that's like, you know, you fly into Modesto, head northeast a little
Right.
bit, like three
Right.
hours. Anyway, so yeah, so they're down there, and so they're like, hey, we want all our family. You know, my dad and stepmom were like, hey, on my dad's side, we want all our family to meet you. We're gonna do a huge barbecue at this park, you know, when you come down.
Mhm.
And so I was like, sweet. So we planned that, and um, you know, it was just, man. So I was so anxious leading up to all that.
Yeah, it was. Oh man, it was. But it was amazing. We had a good conversation. We met each other and the grandchildren, and um, then we tried to, you know, we talked about, you know, meeting each other physically, either us going up there or down there. And I thought, well, you know what? How about are you guys willing to go to Sacramento, because you have all your aunts and uncles from your mother's side, and then all my family is over there too.
Yeah.
So you would, you know, you guys would have the best of both worlds. You know, if you guys go to Sacramento instead of coming all the way to where I'm at.
Right.
So that we agreed, and so then we had set it up for March 30th, I believe, was the Saturday, and so we reserved a park, the community park over there, and they have a golf course. And it's a pretty large park,
Mm-hmm.
and so I put a message out to everybody, to all my family, and I told Jason, I says, I want to meet you the day before, because it's going to be emotional for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd rather do that just us, our families.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, okay. So we did, yeah, and where we met was basically my old stomping grounds where I used to go hang out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. So it was a little barn lounge, and then on the other side of it, it was like they turned it into a bistro, but
Right.
it was real loud and echoed in there.
Uh-huh.
So that was a new place of business there. That was never there when I was younger. But then they had Milano's Pizza, and that was a couple doors down, and that place was, you know, you can actually have a conversation.
Right.
So we ended up meeting at the bistro because his aunt said, no, go to the bistro. You know, you'll like their food, you'll like this and that. Okay, so we went there and we met, and it was real loud. So we really couldn't. I have troubles hearing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really hard for me to hear, and it's just like, I said, let's go next door to the pizza place. So we went to the pizza place, and on our way there, we got there, we ordered pizza and stuff, and I said, hey, Jason, I go, let's go for a walk. Because right down the walkway, the same building, was that bar and lounge I was telling you about.
Right. And
we walk in there, and I actually seen a couple of buddies that I grew up with. And we said hi and everything. We go up to the place, right, the front of the bar where you order your drinks. So the gal comes up, bartender comes up. She says, "What can I get for you?" I said, "I want to buy my son a shot." And I said, "What are you drinking?" And he said what he was drinking, and I said, "I'll take this shot."
Yeah.
And he says, I was still in awe,
Yeah.
Jason and I were talking, and then all of a sudden he says out loud, he says, "This is my dad. I just met my dad tonight. 35 years."
So amazing. So much pride. It's so fun.
Yeah.
That must have felt so special.
Oh, man. Yeah. I tried to pay for that drink, and they wouldn't let us.
Well, you created community in that moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Finally, we get into Sacramento, and we go to meet at the place, and it was just, I saw him in person, and oh man, like I hugged him, and it was, it was awesome,
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just crazy to see this guy that I look like, and I didn't know him for 34 years, and but just that whole night I just looked at him and I was like, holy cow, like this is my dad, like this is crazy, but yeah, I mean, we throughout the whole night, like my stepmom would just be staring at me. She's like, oh my gosh, she's like, you talk just like him, your mannerisms are just like him, he does that exact same thing, and it was cool. But anyways, so my dad was like, Miguel, he was like, I was like, hey, he brought, he is a grill master. That guy, he grills, I mean, he grills for, a lot of things in the community for like, schools and bands. And he does a lot of, fundraisers for.
When you gave me his email address, I was like, this guy must be really good at making meat. Like, I won't say what it is right now, but I was like, I was like, huh, okay,
Yeah.
well, that tells me like a profession or something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
A passion now I know. Okay.
That is his passion. I mean, and he
Cool.
loves it. Like, my brother, I have a brother that was in the band at the high school there, and another brother that played football. And, I was talking to my dad the other day, actually, and he's like, oh man, he's like, we cooked up like 50 pounds of tri-tip and sold it all and all this stuff. And,
wow.
he's really, really passionate about helping. And I'm sure he'll explain a lot of this too, but he's just really passionate about giving to the community and helping out like that, which is awesome because, I mean, that's just awesome,
That's
I don't know.
cool. Yeah.
Anyway, so I said, hey, he brought his grill up and he was cooking tri-tip at the barbecue the next day. So he brought his grill up. I'm like, hey, maybe you can just come pick me up and we can hang out in the morning, just you and I, just to get to know each other, And he's like, yeah, that'd be fun. So picked me up, we went, got some coffee, went to the park, set up, and got everything going. And, and that was like 6 a.m. or 7. And then all of a sudden, just people started pouring in, just more people, and they're like, hey, Primo, hey, this and that, because I don't speak any Spanish.
Well, my Sacramento family came, nieces and nephews, even some friends from high school showed up. The one that called me up the next day, yeah. And everybody exchanged, that day of the picnic, everybody exchanged the information and added them to Facebook, and I'd get a text from him, and he would say, "Who is this?" And I said, "Well, that's your cousin." And okay, I'll send them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that went on for a while, and it still happens once in a while.
And after that, like I got boom, like 15, friend requests, boom, 15 more, boom, 15 more. I'm like, what is going on here?
Uh-huh.
I was like, holy cow. And I'd call them like, hey, who's this person? Hey, who's this person? And finally I was like, you know what? I'll just look for these my family members, immediate family members, 4 names, my mom, my stepbrother, or my mom, my stepmom, my dad, and my 2 brothers. I'll look for, if they're friends with them, I'll add them because they're part of the family, So that was crazy. But yeah, so we've talked ever since, and they've been up here they came up here for the 4th of July this last year. And they came up for a week, and I threw a barbecue, and they met. My dad and I both barbecued, and I smoked the meat, and he met a bunch of our family and friends.
But for the most part, everybody has already friended him, and he's friended everybody, and it's been going on like that. And then, excuse me, our youngest was graduating that year.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 19. So we're preparing for his graduation. So then, Jason and I, we always, kept in contact, call each other and whatnot. And then his graduation, it was on May, and it was just the day before Memorial Weekend. So it was going to be a 3-day weekend. So Jason and Jenny flew out, and they went to his graduation, and it was awesome. It was amazing because when William was getting ready for the graduation, I was outside straightening some things out because people were going to come over, so I was outside, and he comes out, he says, Dad, he goes, can you help me tie this tie? I said, yeah. And then Jason says, Dad, let me help him. Okay. So I started taking pictures of them, getting ready, and it was awesome. It was amazing.
You guys are like a Hallmark commercial. It's amazing.
It was, and the community around here, it's when I first came over here, I always been involved with my sons, and fundraising and whatnot, throughout the years of them growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I wrote in Facebook about how I received a life-changing phone call, and I had a 35-year-old son, even the community started texting me and asking me, when are we going to meet him? When are we going to meet him? We want to meet him. So I said, okay. I said, yeah, you'll meet him. So when I knew he was coming to the graduation, I put the word out that he was going to be in town.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I had some cigars made. That instead of saying it's a boy, it's a man. Put his name on there, and we put down February 11th, 2018. 2019, sorry.
Yeah, no.
And
oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So I passed out these cigars, and it was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
The 3 brothers got together, and they put the cigars in their mouth. They took pictures. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
It was cool. Jason's been involved. Jason, one of their family, Jason, Jenny, and they've been involved for milestones in our kids' lives. He also came for. Not all of them were able to come all the time, but Jason was able to come for my older sons. He was in the bodybuilding. He had a bodybuilding show in Fresno. So we surprised him, Jason, by picking up Jason from the airport, and we were all there at the show, and it was awesome.
That's cool.
It was an awesome time. Yeah. Yes. And this time just it's still going, and we're still finding out new things about each other, it's amazing because we talk about, well, like when he calls or I'll call him, he'll ask me questions about barbecuing, and because he smokes his meat. He has a nice electric smoker, and I do mine over the fire. I use wood. I don't use charcoal. So I do mine slow. If I'm barbecuing and they want to eat at 4:00, well, I need to put the food on at about 10 or 11.
Right.
Because that's how slow I do it.
Yeah, you do.
So and he asked me about that, and I asked him, about smoking and stuff, and then he says I want to try it one time. So Irma and I and the kids, we drove over to Jenny posted on Facebook in search of a truck. Need to move some things, and Irma says, well, let's go. And I thought she was, this was right after Christmas, and I thought she was just pulling my leg. And I go, what do you mean? I go, how are we gonna go? She goes, well, you're already off. I'm off, so the kids are off. She goes, let's make a quick run over there. I says, are you serious? She goes, yeah, we'll leave right now.
You guys are so fun.
So we packed up some stuff and we hit the road.
Perfect.
Excuse me. So we get there that night. It was probably about 9:00 or so, and we wanted to surprise them. So their best friends that we had met before. They offered. They said, you know what? Come stay over here, and then we'll go over there in the morning. I said, okay, cool. So we stayed there, and then we went over to Jason's in the morning the next day and surprised them. And I said, okay, your truck's here. Let's get what has to be moved. And they were like, no way.
And he's like, oh yeah, our friend lives really far away. I'm like, oh. He's like, yeah, about 13 hours away. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, we're gonna be up in Portland here a little bit. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. So they came up and they brought their truck up and they helped us do a dump run and hung out for a couple of days, and it was awesome. Like, oh man. And I do hear this a lot on your podcast too, how some people feel bad about their situation because I don't know. It's just like I do hear some of these horror like stories, and it's like man, like that's so horrible. I can't believe that. I don't know. It's really heartbreaking to hear how some of these people are treated after they find out, and but part of the thing is like, so this is another thing is a lot of people are like, well, don't, like, I always got the questions like, well, how come your mom didn't say anything? How come this? How come that? Because I remember I was in my birth certificate father and my mom's pictures for their wedding, so I was already born.
Okay.
And our, like, later on I was thinking, because my sister, obviously I'm a little curious. I'm curious on how all this stuff went down. And
Sure.
part of it is like I was thinking, and I was like, oh man, like I remember in grade school, my friends were going around saying, hey, how did you get your name? And my friend's like, well, I got mine Jason from Jason and the Argonauts, from the Bible. I was like, cool, and they asked me, I'm like, I don't know, my name's Jason, like, heck if I know. And so I asked my mom, and she's like, oh, your dad wanted to name you Jason, and I wanted to name you Miguel, but obviously your dad, won that battle. And I was like, oh, cool.
She said that to you when you were a kid?
Yeah. So now fast forwarding to when this happens, I'm like, that is crazy. Like,
she was like planting the teeniest seed
of
information. I don't think on purpose necessarily, but wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so yeah, exactly. And then like, when I was born, my dad Miguel, his mom came over to congratulate, us on, or not us, but me, like my mom and on having the baby, having me. And she's like, oh my gosh, he has big hands just like my Mickey. And that's who my dad is,
Yeah.
So it's, so obviously like hearing a bunch of these stories, because my mom told me that story when, like a couple of days after, because I asked her a lot of questions. There was days of questions,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so there's another time, and when my dad Miguel's mom had passed away, my mom went to the service to pay respects, and it was her and a couple of his friends showing pictures of their kids, and one guy was there, and he saw a picture, and nothing happened. But the next day he called my dad Miguel, and he's like, hey, Becky was showing us pictures, and her son Jason, he's yours. Like, he looks just like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because I guess he was like one of the only guys that knew about what happened back then. And my dad said, my dad Miguel, he was busy chasing around his young kids at the time, but he never, I don't know, he never thought anything of it,
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes that information probably comes to people, and in the moment they're like, well, what am I supposed to do about it right now? Like, everybody's busy with little kids.
And it was at his mom's funeral.
Right.
So
yeah, he had other things on his mind.
Oh, definitely, yeah. But so everyone asks, like, man, like, come on, you're telling me she wouldn't have known. I'm like, listen, like, when I was born, I was 19. Plus, I mean, she was 19 when I was born.
I figured that's what you meant.
Yeah. And I'm like, what is it going to benefit me to sit here and just like, oh, you had to have known, you're lying to me, because I'm not. That's not what I found out who my dad was. I found out kind of the story. And am I a little curious still? Yeah. But, but part of it is like, she was 19. Like, I'm sure, she got married because, she was pregnant, and, maybe, I don't know. It's just, I can't even imagine being in that situation, and what I would do or say, cause I don't know, but it's, I'm definitely still curious, but I'm not like, super attached to it or anything.
Right.
I'm just
and it sounds like you're curious, but you're empathetic.
Well, definitely.
Like, you're curious, but you're not judgmental. So sometimes maybe just curiosity has to stay that way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would definitely like to find out later on, but it's like, I heard on your podcast the other day, actually, someone talking about something kind of like this, and she talked about how, well, sometimes when you tell yourself one thing, you start to believe it a lot, and that's exactly what I think maybe happened. I don't know, but
yeah, no, I think that happens. I think that happens more than anybody knows. I think.
I do feel. I mean, I know it's not really my fault, but I feel guilty because I've had such a easy, good transition.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy, and already, like, and this was let's see, I mean, it's been a year since I've first found out, almost. But oh yeah, my wife and I, we went down to visit them at their house too for my brother's graduation, and that was cool because when we went there, it was funny because he had another big barbecue. He barbecues all the time. Any chance he gets.
I get what he likes to do here.
Yeah. So, but he brought out these cigars, and he's like, "Hey, everyone, I just want to do this announcement. My son Jason," and he pulls out the cigar, and it has the date that he was called, and it says "It's a man" on it.
Jason, that's so funny.
Oh man, it was awesome.
It's funny. Oh my God, that's great.
The thing is we had such a good connection. And this is what happened is my sister right away, when I found out all this happened, she said, "Okay, there's this secret Facebook group. You need to go to it." I'm like, no. Yeah, she knew about it. Yeah, she's crazy. Like, she knows everything. Yeah. And I'm like, no, it's okay. And after I met my dad, I think it was around July. All these questions started coming up. Like, okay, did I say I love you too soon? Because I had said I loved him already, and he said he loved me too. And it was just, it felt natural though, but it felt weird because I've never said I love you to someone I've known in such a short time.
You kind of hear about this kind of stuff here and there, and you don't really pay attention to it until it hits home.
Right.
And it basically when it actually happens to you.
Right.
And since it has, I hear all kinds of stories of these the meetings from DNA and people searching, and a lot of them it's very sad because
Yeah.
a lot of them, they don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it does not go this way usually.
Right, and it's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
But I told my wife, I told her, I says, he's my blood. I'm not going to turn him away.
Yeah.
I want to get to know him, and things have been going amazing, absolutely amazing. And he's calling us mom and dad. And
wow.
They're changing their names.
Right.
Thing.
This is awesome. They're great. Everybody is great in this story. And you know what? You know what's interesting, Jason, is like I hear you saying that you feel, sort of guilty or bad that you get to have such a good story when there's so many bad stories out there. But you know what? I think that for one thing, there's this already, but there's no point in feeling guilty about it. There's nothing you can do. But the other thing is that I bet there are a lot of good stories out there. They're just not the ones getting told because because the people aren't in, support groups. They're not out there searching for things like they, I don't know. I think that, we have no idea of knowing really like what percentages are happening for people of bad experiences versus good experiences. And the bad stories, quote unquote, are a little more like newsworthy or exciting, and they're the ones that get told. But your story is like so beautiful, and it needs to be told like from the mountaintops. It's just like people need to know there are good people out there. Just so awesome. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for everybody in your story. Like everybody got like a new son and a new dad and new brothers, and it just sounds like you guys are really, really good people.
Yeah, no, it
really warms my heart.
No, it's been an awesome transition, and it's just been amazing. And other than getting married and having kids, it's been one of the best things in my life.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's so what we were gonna do is because my wife and I've been a snook my whole life, and my wife has been a snook for the past 15 years. We were gonna hyphenate it. We're gonna do I was gonna do Jason Snook Wahardo for my wife and I, and then my kids were gonna be Wahardos. But my 7-year-old, he got sad. He's like, no. He's like, I want to be just like you guys. Whatever you guys do, I want to do. And I was like, man, Jennifer, maybe like I feel bad because like I've been a snook my whole life, and I love the snook so much. I almost feel like it would be like not a disservice, but I feel like it would be a slap to the face to get rid of the name. I don't know, but those are some questions that I'm still trying to go through because I don't know. I don't know. I just had to think about it. But, we have been toying with the idea of just going Wahardo for our last name. But we're definitely going to change it to something, whether it's Snook-Wahardo or just Wahardo. Because, oh man, it's just been an awesome connection. It's been amazing,
So I always ask people if they have advice for somebody that's just found out. If somebody just has gotten there, if they're in that place where they see the DNA results and they realize it means that their dad or their parent isn't their parent, do you have any advice for that moment?
I do. I listen to your podcast all the time, and I hear that question all the time. And ever since you and I have been in contact, every time I listen to it, I'm like, man, what would I say? And I have no idea.
That's okay too.
I feel like my story has been so different, and I didn't like. And it was just so fast. And so it was just, everything happened so fast. There are times when I have time to sit down and think, but it's just, I don't think about that, and I just don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know, grab a bottle of wine and, I don't know.
That's advice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's what I'm just asking, I with no expectations. And it's actually great. It's just so great to get your story. Well, you're just a great storyteller, but also it's just great to just get another kind of story that's different from the others and shows that there are like ways this can all turn out good. I have a couple happy ending stories, but yours feels extra special for some reason.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's been one of the best times of my life. I mean, I don't know. I look back at it and I'm just like, I think of all the times that we did go through with this, and I was like, it was definitely a roller coaster of things at first.
Mm-hmm.
And especially up until the day I met him. And it was just, man, even man, even now, like, I mean, not even now, it's only been a year. Like, so much has happened in that one little year. Like, I feel like
so
it's been forever, But yeah, I mean, even like when he came up to, because we're definitely still getting to know each other, but
sure.
the feelings for love are there.
Okay, my wife was just she found the original story that I had posted on. I guess it says April 1, 2019. Okay, it says February 11th. I got a phone call that changed my life. I was told I have a 34-year-old son with a wife and 2 kids. I was so nervous and excited to meet him. Excited as well. Also very supportive. We were blessed this weekend to have met my son Jason. So this was right after the
barbecue
picnic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
His beautiful wife Jenny and our 2 grandkids, Titus and Rexy. Thank you all again for being there to welcome them to our family.
Woo! Thank you so much, Jason and Miguel. Such strong, brave humans for embracing one another and one another's family. They make it sound and seem so fun. I wasn't kidding when I said I was feeling a little jealous, which isn't to say there aren't people reaching out in my own scenario, but this story just makes it seem so easy, and it does not feel easy to me at all. And they are so lucky to immediately feel a kinship and have things in common. I'm just not sure I have that. But time will tell. Things can change. Who knows? Stay tuned. But to pivot away from me, back to Jason and Miguel, did you hear all that talk about barbecuing? I cut a lot out, but I tried to leave some in because that's a big part of their connection. So if you listened to this episode, do yourself a big favor. Go on Facebook and find this group called the Original Tri-Tip Sandwich by Miguel Guajardo. The Original Tri-Tip Sandwich. So join and follow this page so you can keep up to date with what Miguel is doing and making, where he is serving and selling his amazing meat. If you don't live in California and you don't know how or when you would ever get to this man's food, follow him anyway. See if there isn't some other way you can support him and his business. He does really cool things for really cool organizations in his community, and I just think it would be so fun if we could all give him a boost via Facebook. So good people making good food. I just don't see why we can't help. So, and in fact, I don't even really eat meat, guys, but I follow Miguel's group, and if I ever have the opportunity, I am definitely going to get there and try that tri-tip. If it wasn't so incredibly smoky in Central California this past week, we might have actually tried to swing through, but instead we drove as fast as possible, or like as legally possible, to get to my family's cabin in the Sierra Nevada Tahoe Donner area. So it's like an extended family's cabin that everybody shares, and we here in LA rarely use it. Even though it's available to us, because it just feels so far from Los Angeles. But, and most of my family lives in Northern California, so it's not so far for them. But we needed the break so badly and needed some wide open spaces. So it was wonderful to have this opportunity to get out of LA for this week, and the kids could run around in the crisp, fresh air when it wasn't smoky from California wildfires, and we could go swim in the lake, and we all needed a change of scenery during this really hard summer. But I have to say that it took a long time, within like 1 week, to relax, for me to relax into it. And now that I'm back in LA in my own home, I can see very much how much my mind was spinning and spending time in this space that is owned by and very dedicated to my birth certificate father's family. The name is everywhere. Pictures are everywhere. I grew up spending many, many winters and summers in this place. And now that this thing has happened, it's a little bit foreign for me. And it, like, logically maybe shouldn't, but that's the truth I was feeling really aware of while I was there. Talking to Jason and Miguel about Jason's like embrace of changing his last name was really like on my mind while I was at this cabin this past week. My own last name is so familiar, and now even that is like a little bit strange sometimes, like in my mind or on my tongue. And so the name of my biological dad and his family is way stranger. It doesn't feel like it would make any sense in the world to change my name. I like never even considered it, except in the most abstract hypothetical way. Mostly when people ask me, like, well, would you ever change your name? Or when I'm reading other people in support groups, they'll talk about the process of changing their name. But it doesn't feel like it's for me. But it's got me thinking all about those details and all the ways that all these small things are the part of our identity or of one's identity. You know, the name is the way we're identified, and also like the sound of our voice and the way we look. Just all these things is shook up a bit when one finds out that they aren't who they thought they were. So that's what's going on with me. On that note, I wish you a lovely Labor Day weekend if you're here in America. I wish you a graceful entry into autumn, regardless of what you do this weekend if you live anywhere else. I'm going to do my best to be back in 2 weeks with episode 9. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Eve Sturgis, and this is Everything's Relative podcast. Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis is produced by Kaylin Egan and Eve Sturgis. Eve Sturgis is a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California, but the conversations she has on the podcast are not therapy sessions. Logo design by Ivy McNally, and music used with permission by Goodbye the Band.